Today's episode brings us to Sterling, Massachusetts. What if I told you a quiet, shy boy living with his parents in an East Coast small-town suburb, fresh out of high school, just 19 years old, just starting as a college freshman. But he wasn't like all other college freshmen. This boy, Matthew Lane, hacked into some large organizations, working with other young hackers across the country, and extorted the victims for millions. Then one morning, he got a loud knock at the door, and he wound up being arrested. While he had succeeded in extorting both organizations, he did so at the price of affecting the medical and financial lives of 60 million students, teachers, and staff in the K-12 organizations and that education K-12 space all across North America. This isn't fiction. This is federal court. This is the story of how to protect children online, the PowerSchool breach. Small talk sucks, so let's dive in. Catch us on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, and dive deeper at cybercrimejunkies.com. Don't just watch, be the type of person that fights back. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. Meet Matthew D. Lane. Teenager, freshman student at Assumption University, and until recently, a virtual ghost on the internet. From Sterling, Massachusetts, Lane wasn't known for much. No public social profiles, no news articles, not even a student spotlight. Just your typical, quiet freshman. Until he wasn't. In April 2024, Lane and his still unidentified co-conspirator from California, Lane was over in Sterling, Massachusetts at the time, they launched a full-blown extortion campaign against a U.S. telecommunications company. The telecom hack happened between April and May of this past year, 2024. Lane conspired with his partner to extort $200,000 from this telecommunications firm, threatening to leak stolen customer data. He personally sent extortion threats and tried to use encrypted apps to anonymize his identity. He entered the extortion game that month in April 2024. There's no records of him being involved in hacking prior, at least none that have come out yet. And in his efforts, he was attempting to extort this U.S.-based telecom company for $200,000. It tied back to data that was previously stolen back in October 2022, purportedly by another member of Lane's hacking group. The U.S. telecom group did not comply, even though Lane lowered the ransom down to $75,000. Undeterred, Lane told his hacking group that, quote, "We need to hack another company that'll really pay this time," unquote. So they collected what they could from the telco and set their eyes on a bigger prize. He had told the telco when he was negotiating his extortion with them, he said, quote, "Stop this nonsense or your executives and your employees will see the same fate," unquote. He used encrypted signal chats, anonymous emails, and classic hacker scare tactics. And it worked. The company ultimately paid off. But then he set his sights higher. And for a freshman kid in his first year of school, this was right at the beginning. And he set his sights extremely high. Well, here comes the real jaw dropper. In September 2024, he used stolen credentials. He gathered those stolen credentials, the stolen passwords, the stolen login information, either through a phishing campaign or he bought it online from an initial access broker. We've talked about IABs, initial access brokers, before. What they do is they gain entry or they find compromised credentials, and then they sell them in marketplaces online. And they're just not part of like a ransomware group or an attacking group going after them. They just sell the initial access. That's why they're called initial access brokers. And they'll sell it for $3,000 to $5,000, and then more organized, more mercenary groups will buy that access and then go and attack the actual victim. So here it's speculative, but that's what it clearly seems in the industry. They're saying that it happened. And he did it to breach a very, very large organization. Not just the regional telco that they were demanding a couple $100,000 for and took a lot less. This one involved PowerSchool, the software provider that's used by over 18,000 school districts and over 60 million students across North America. Before I share the result of our research, let me ask you, did you know that a single set of compromised credentials could expose the personal data of over 60 million students and teachers? How could a lack of multi-factor authentication and standard real-time threat detection allow hackers to breach one of the nation's largest school information systems? After just a few months into 2025, the recent hack of the U.S. edtech giant PowerSchool is on track to be one of the biggest educational data breaches in recent years. PowerSchool provides K-12 software to all of those students, 18,000 different schools throughout Canada and the United States, and they support some approximately 60 million students across North America. They first disclosed their data breach in early this year, January 2025. But what we're about to see is the breach and the compromise occurred a lot longer, a lot earlier, and sat there undetected for a while. PowerSchool was once owned by Apple. It was sold by Apple in the early 2000s, and it was publicly traded, and then they got bought out. They had Vista Equity Partners as investors. In October of 2024, right as this all was going on, Bain Capital, the infamous Bain Capital, the global investment firm, they bought PowerSchool for $5.6 billion and took them private. California-based company said an unknown hacker used a single compromised credential, meaning one person's login information. That's it. That's what that means in English. And from there, they breached its customer support portal and stayed inside for over 100 days, undetected. We talk about this all the time, the importance of real-time detection. I invite the listeners to freaking Google it. You can Google how long are hackers inside my network undetected, and you will be mind blown by the answer. So here they were inside over 100 days, totally undetected. Multiple investigations indicate that the credentials used to access PowerSchool's PowerSource customer support portal had been available on the dark web for a considerable time before the December 2024 incident. This suggests that the credential was compromised in an earlier breach or via phishing and then leaked online, just like we just explained, through the initial access brokers. The result? Well, it was pretty clear. Prior credentials of PowerSchool were leaked online, and then predating this was a prior breach or phishing. Password reuse is a very common cause of this. Now, once inside the PowerSource tool inside of PowerSchool, the attacker exploited Matthew Lane, the 19-year-old kid, exploited a maintenance tool designed for PowerSchool engineers, allowing them to access customer student information instances, SIS instances, which are student information system. Think of everything involving a student, the medical records, the emotional things, the outbursts, the grades, the healthcare information, the parents, the next of kin, the emergency contacts, all of that. This access that Matthew Lane and his counterpart gained facilitated the extraction of data from student and teacher database tables. Extraction, exfiltration, all fancy words for stealing. So back in August 16th of 2024, the initial unauthorized access occurred, and all of that remained undetected by PowerSchool until late December. So from August 16th all the way to late December. On September 17th, 2024, a second unauthorized access occurred with the same credentials. Again, completely undetected by PowerSchool. And all of this happened months before the breach was detected. So what were they able to access? What is taken from the students, teachers, and staff? Well, students and faculty staff members' full names, their physical addresses, their home addresses, their phone numbers, their passwords for logging in. And still it's unclear what will happen to the leaked sensitive data of over 60 million students and 10 million teachers. The breaches resulted in over 100 districts suing PowerSchool and several districts being contacted with follow-up extortion threats. The court documents that have been involved in these cases, we've gone through all of them. We're going to talk about them just briefly in a second. We're not going to get into the legal minutia. That would be dry. But the court documents suggest that PowerSchool didn't know about the data breach for over 100 days until Matthew Lane, that 19-year-old from Sterling, Massachusetts, until he began extorting the company on December 28th when PowerSchool first said it learned of the incident. It seems like their first awareness of this is when he starts extorting them at the end of December, right after Christmas. So how did the attack happen? We've kind of gone over this. The early investigation into the attack provides some clues, namely credential theft. They compromised or used credentials to access PowerSchool's PowerSource customer service portal. It's not totally clear how they were able to access the compromise of the credentials, though credential theft is really common. It can happen when you click on a phishing email. It can happen various other ways by reusing passwords and being involved in other breaches. Credentials can be potentially stolen in a number of different ways, including phishing and social engineering attacks. And then after that, the unauthorized access occurs. The PowerSource customer support portal that the cyber attacker accessed, it contained that maintenance tool that allowed PowerSchool engineers to access customer student information instances in order for them to be able to support and troubleshoot performance issues. Think like this. PowerSchool is there providing their software to 18,000 school districts across North America. When a school district has problems accessing something or something isn't configured right, the PowerSchool IT team, internal team, needs to use this tool so that they can deal with the customer support and they can make changes and configurations and stuff in order to repair it. Well, Matthew Lane and his counterpart got access, unauthorized access, and were able to use that tool, which allowed them to touch 18,000 different school districts and all of the students, teachers, and staff of all of them. It's a major, major breach. Once inside the system, they accessed and exported the data management customer support tool to extract the data from PowerSchool student information students and the teachers' database tables. So by accessing this PowerSource instance, they were able to get names, addresses, social security numbers, but they were also able to get this: medical information, parent contacts, even login passwords. It exposed a lot of sensitive information for kids: special education status, student special ed development plans and diagnoses, mental health data, parental and student legal proceedings, custody proceedings, otherwise sealed information like custody agreements, restraining orders, and other legal information are all exposed on the dark web now. medical records, social security numbers, like we mentioned, home addresses, home and phone cell numbers, right? First, full names of students, parents, and teachers, and then all of the medical and mental health data. Testing records, student grades, right? There is a medical alert field inside of PowerSchool that contained health information parents wanted their students' schools to be aware of. When asked why it had not listed special education status, custody agreements, and disciplinary notes in its original notice about what data had been exposed, PowerSchool was far less than transparent. Their spokesman had said the fields are not created by PowerSchool and were customized add-ons put in place by schools. But it's still involved in this breach and should be explained. For example, Adam Larson, an assistant superintendent at an Illinois school district that got breached here, he also works as a data consultant for the schools, said a handful of his school district clients had sensitive student mental health and special education data all exposed from this PowerSchool breach. So what did Matthew Lane and his counterpart do with it? Well, they siphoned off all that data and stored it on a rented server in the Ukraine. I kid you not. And it gets worse. So the U.S. prosecuting attorney, Foley, wrote in a court filing that Lane had access to the company's student and teacher data, including names, email addresses, and listed everything that I just mentioned. He allegedly told the company, PowerSchool, that if it didn't pay nearly $2.85 million in ransom, he would, quote, leak, unquote, the stolen information, quote, worldwide, unquote. So he was threatening the individual, he was threatening PowerSchool, and then before they and after they agreed to pay him a ransom, he was going after the individual school districts, threatening to expose all of the children's and staff and teachers' information that's highly sensitive and will affect them the rest of their lives while they're in their formative years, all of that worldwide. So he was playing really hard with them. So why did PowerSchool not stop the attack? Why did this large company not be able to find this before 100-some days? I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. It's owned by Bain Capital, for Christ's sake. They're supporting 20,000 big customers across the globe. But the reality is much different. And they got slapped in the face by this kid right out of high school. PowerSchool had 106 days from when the hacker first accessed one school district's data in August and September of 2024 to when he stole thousands of districts' data in late September. But they didn't detect it, and therefore they didn't stop the incident. And that's important because the states and the school districts have to entrust these vendors like PowerSchool with all their data. And it lives on the vendor's platform. There is literally nothing the districts could have done to prevent the data breach. That's our take on it. PowerSchool confirmed, and this is where it's like a palm slap in the head of levels of ridiculousness. So not only did they not invest to have real-time detection, have multi-factor authentication, which could have arguably stopped this, but PowerSchool confirmed that it paid a ransom, which the FBI always recommends not to do because you are funding cybercrime, but they paid a ransom and they never disclosed the amount. So they never told people, first of all, the true timeline until it came out after 2025 from the CrowdStrike investigative report after the breach went public.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Most business leaders have a fatal flaw which results in their growth being interrupted or stopped terminally. They ignore the mountain they're about to crash into, distracted by the focus on revenue growth. Until it's too late. Don't become another fatal business statistic. Keep your cybersecurity modern so you can grow without interruption. Stay competitive. Get net gain. Stay focused on your growth and funding. while NetGain keeps your technology always available with expert-level cybersecurity services to stop breaches in their tracks, all at a fraction of the cost of managing it yourself. Don't wait for a technology disaster to interrupt and cripple your growth. Speak with a specialist today. Contact NetGain Technologies today at 844-777-6278 or reach out online at netgainit.com. That's 844-777-6278 and netgainit.com. Grow your business uninterrupted. Contact NetGain today.
But then they didn't disclose all the different details and how sensitive the data was, right? In addition to that, they asked when they paid the ransom, and this is the mind-blowing thing, the forehead slapping moment, is PowerSchool is on record saying, well, there is no evidence whatsoever that any of the data is being leaked online. Why do they do that? And why do they believe that? Well, first of all, their sole reason is that the attacker, either Matthew Lane or his currently unidentified co-conspirator over in California, they did a FaceTime video showing them deleting the data. Okay. Really? Okay, and they bought that, and that's their reasoning. Like, we saw them delete it. They were pressing keys on a keyboard. We saw them delete it. Unbelievable, right? So with that, and here's the best part is, after that occurred then, right, and they were convinced that we've paid them this major ransom, we've seen the video. We are convinced that they're not going to do it. Except they did, right? So after this, what happened was they went and Matthew Lane or his counterpart went and started to extort individual school districts. So they're getting what they can get out of a PowerSchool. And they convinced PowerSchool, hey, here's a video, like, you're all good. But then after that, they went after individual school districts. And that's all laid out in several of the over 100 lawsuits that are pending that we took a look of. Like, it was ridiculous. So let's back up here just a bit. That was a lot of information to share. So I want to back up and I want to recap some things to kind of give you some context. Makes sense? Let's dive into that. So on December 28, 2024, PowerSchool receives Matthew Lane's ransom demand. It's his ultimatum. Pay me 30 Bitcoin, around $2.85 million, or this data goes public. That is the literal quote. Pay me 30 Bitcoin, around $2.85 million, or the data goes public. That is extortion right there. PowerSchool reportedly paid the ransom. They watched the data be deleted, air quotes around the word watched the data being deleted, over a video. Anyway, I can hear the gasps of ridiculousness and the forehead slapping. I mean, did we just say that aloud? So, according to court documents from the U.S. Department of Justice, the DOJ, made public on May 20th, just a couple weeks ago, 2025, PowerSchool received the extortion demand of approximately $2 million in Bitcoin. The ransom was paid. PowerSchool has not disclosed the exact amount of the ransom. The ransom was paid in exchange for a video that allegedly showed the attackers claiming to delete the only copy of the data. Okay, here's a newsflash. That's not true. That's not the way it works. Never, ever do that, ever, under any circumstances, right? Showing a video of somebody deleting something is meaningless. They didn't really delete it. Okay? Can't believe I had to say that. But then what's interesting is, as late as May 7th, after all that, they were sending extortion emails to schools in Canada and North Carolina that had included samples of the stolen data, because they send that with the demand. It's a proof of life, right? They are sending proof. We have your data. Here's a screenshot of several pieces so that they know it's their data, it's stolen, and it's in the hacker's hands. So the data, apparently, and that's really not the end, because even days after that, school employees keep getting new extortion threats. So the data is still out there. So none of this has even resolved it. So what's the impact of the attack? Let's think about this. PowerSchool data breach had a broad impact on students, educators, and the educational institutions throughout the K-12 space throughout North America. First, there's privacy concerns. The data leakage of private information, personal identifying information that can be tied directly to a child, right? That is sensitive and should be sealed, right? That puts individuals at risk of identity theft and fraud. And why is that so bad? Well, we've talked about it numerous times on this show, and it's this. Kids' identities can be used by threat actors for decades before the kids are even aware of it. Why? Because most parents don't freeze their kids' credit, and they never monitor their kids' credit. Why? Because they're not taking loans out. Little Johnny is 4 years old, right? Well, little Johnny's identity can and often is used repeatedly. And what happens is when they become of age and they're trying to get loans and their FICO score matters, etc., we've met the families, we've had them on this show, right? Like where they're like, they have a foreclosed condo in Nevada. They have $100,000 in medical bills. They have a car that's been repoed. All of this from a child's identity, because from there, they will take that, they will create new identities, they will take loans out in that name, they will get names legally changed, all tied back to that individual child's social security number, and the kid and the parents have no freaking clue. And this is what happens regularly. We talk about it on this show. So what is the cure for that? Guess what? It's free. Just freeze your kids' credit. Do it. It's free. We even show you how to do it, and we give you the steps right on our website, cybercrimejunkies.com. So what are the other impacts from this breach? The long-term risk. The compromise of personal data can have long-lasting effects, as data such as social security numbers, birth date information can be misused for years into the future, especially among minors. There's also the financial impact. Education districts and schools will need to spend money now to improve cybersecurity and provide higher degrees of privacy assurance, because this exposes all of their weaknesses. And then there's legal challenges, which are not cheap. There are lawsuits pending, over 100 of them, against PowerSchool, and various school districts need to be paying for that, meaning even if they win, there are still going to be a lot of costs, a lot of time and resources involved in depositions, court filings, motion practice, you name it. And then there's operational disruptions. While PowerSchool claims no operational disruptions, affected school districts will need to implement new security measures and update data management practices and privacy controls. All of that now has to happen. So let's talk about the legal reckoning for a second. On May 20th, 2025, the U.S. attorneys charged Matthew Lane with the following: cyber extortion conspiracy, unauthorized access to protected computers, and aggravated identity theft. Well, just last week, he was in court with his family flanked by his side, and Matthew Lane pleaded guilty to all of it. He told the judge the following: true, he told the judge, all of it. He literally said, everything you just said, you just read in that indictment is true. Every bit of it. Prosecutors say Lane could face up to 17 years in prison, and they're demanding a minimum sentence of 94 months. That is nearly 8 years. So what Matthew Lane is facing is going to be life-changing for him. He's agreed to forfeit over $160,000 in cash and any crypto assets tied to the crime whatsoever. His sentencing is scheduled for, ironically, 9/11. So September 11th of this year, 2025, and we will update you after that. He is set to be sentenced. He's currently living under house arrest with his parents, and is banned from using any internet-connected devices. And naturally, he's no longer in college. So why does all this matter and why do we care? Well, the breach wasn't just massive. It was kind of personal, right? Parents believe their children's info is safe. Teachers trust their districts. Schools trusted PowerSchool. But PowerSchool didn't detect Lane's access for over 100 days. 100 days. While this kid, barely out of high school himself, was inside their systems, exfiltrating, again, fancy word for steal, all of that private, sensitive information.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, Cybercrime Junkies. Got a question that keeps you up at night, or ever wish you could hear from a specific guest, or have a true cybercrime story you want us to investigate? You can now text our studio directly at 904-867-4466. Don't be a stranger. Text us at 904-867-4466. Don't miss the chance to be part of the conversation. Text us direct at 904-867-4466.
And let's not forget the ambulance chasers. Let's cue the lawsuits. Over 100 school districts are now suing PowerSchool. So there's going to be a lot of exchange of all this information and digging into the details and depositions. North Carolina's Attorney General called it a serious compromise. Several lawsuits have been filed against PowerSchool following the breach. One of them is a class action suit filed by the law firm Hagens Berman on behalf of the affected students and families, and another lawsuit involves the Memphis Shelby County Schools. These lawsuits are seeking both monetary damages and injunctive relief, including reimbursement for expenses and costs associated with the breach. Here's a more detailed breakdown. So the Memphis Shelby County Schools lawsuit, it's the largest school district in Tennessee. They filed a lawsuit against PowerSchool in the U.S. District Court of Southern California, accusing them of negligence, breach of contract, false advertising related to the breach. They're asking for money and reimbursement of costs. The class action suit filed by the law firm Hagens Berman, that was filed where they're representing the estimated 60 million students and families affected by the breach. That lawsuit alleges that PowerSchool failed to adequately protect the sensitive data of students and families. There's another class action lawsuit by Chandrell O'Connie. They filed a class action lawsuit in the U.S. District of the Eastern District of California, claiming her children were impacted by the breach. The lawsuit alleges that PowerSchool was negligent and failed to provide timely notice or transparent notice to affected users. Again, there's that long gap where there wasn't any detection, and then when they came out, they were very vague about what was actually released in a timely manner. It wasn't until months later, when the CrowdStrike report came out at the end of January, early February of 2025, that things started to leak out to the public. There's also a whole host of other lawsuits and investigations. We mentioned there's close to 100 lawsuits that we've reviewed that we know of. There's a potential multi-district litigation called an MDL to consolidate the various cases. And there's also Canada, because a bunch of these school districts that were breached were in Canada. So Canada's privacy commissioner also announced a new, fresh investigation into the breach. And the bigger picture is the education sector, it's bleeding from every side. Over 82% of K-12 schools in the U.S. reported a cyber attack in the past year. 82%. The average time to detect a breach in the education technology space, over 6 months. And it's only getting worse. We're talking supply chain attacks like this one with PowerSchool. You hit one vendor, you're able to affect 1,000 schools instantly. This is a really frustrating breach. So let's take a look real quick at what our hot take is on this and what the highlights of this are. I mean, the final twist in our hot take recap, if you will, is how in the freaking world can this happen? It's embarrassing. And PowerSchool should be embarrassed. They didn't seem to do things correctly until after they got breached. And then they've really had a struggle being transparent with the families, the teachers, the districts, and the children. I mean, look, anybody can be breached. We understand that. And we generally don't dog on, victims of breaches. But the victims here weren't PowerSchool necessarily. The actual victims are the children and the actual school districts who all relied on them. They relied on PowerSchool in their supply chain. And PowerSchool didn't even have the multi-factor authentication, right? Very basic, standard, right? And they didn't have threat detection. Not every school district has threat detection, although they should. But because of cost, sometimes they don't have active eyes on glass, like what a security operations center does. But PowerSchool should have. How could they not be held to that standard? They're holding and having access to 60 million students' private data. How do they not be required to have threat detection, 24/7 glass, to know about it within minutes, not 106 days later? It's mind-blowing. I mean, it just blows your mind. PowerSchool had told schools in January that it paid a ransom to a hacker and that they watched the data be deleted via video. I mean, if that's not an aggravating circumstance because of the stupidity there or the mind-blowing ignorance, I don't know what else. They've expressed confidence that the data would not be leaked. And all of this has been reported in local media. WRAL there has reported on it several times. But days after WRAL reported on it in the news, several North Carolina school district employees began receiving additional new threatening messages from Matthew Lane and his co-conspirator, claiming to have had the data and asking for Bitcoin to keep the data secure. So it keeps getting worse, right? Now they're going after the individual schools after that. And I mean, just think about detection. Why wasn't it in place here? Nor multi-factor authentication. None of these are rocket science, new trending, emerging technologies. These have been around for decades. This is standard, reasonable care. And it wasn't done here. So we would argue that this is going to be really tough for PowerSchool to battle against in court. And it's going to be interesting to see where the juries and where the judges land on this. The bottom line is PowerSchool had over 100 days to detect and had millions of dollars of revenue to exercise reasonable care. They literally held the private data of tens of millions of our most innocent civilians, our children, and they relied on a 19-year-old criminal who showed them a video claiming to delete the data. It's like amateur night at the cybersecurity bar. It's unbelievable. And then they've really battled with transparency. And this is the thing that's really getting a lot of people upset in the security community. Because despite acknowledging the investigation's findings, PowerSchool has neither disclosed the total number of students and faculty members affected by the incident. They still haven't done it even yet today. They've also not confirmed its awareness of the two prior breaches. They hadn't done that until the CrowdStrike report came out in early March of 2025, saying that there had been the exact same access with the exact same credentials back in September, right? Like 2 times prior to the time when they exfiltrated all the data. So they had been in for a long time. At this time, PowerSchool still has not officially shared the total number of impacted schools, students, or teachers, raising concerns about transparency. Now, sources have told various media outlets, including Bleeping Computer, and we'll have links to all this in the show notes, that the breach impacted 6,505 school districts in the U.S., Canada, and other countries, with 62 million students. The exact number, according to Bleeping Computer, is 62,488,628 students and 9,506,624 teachers, all having had their data stolen. At the end of the day, Matthew Lane didn't break into one school. He breached the backbone of the entire education system. One kid, one stolen password, 60 million victims. Let that sink in. I'm David Morrow, and this is the reality of how organizations value our data and our children's data. And Matthew Lane, this is the face of cybercrime today. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we hope you enjoyed the story.